on the 3rd of February 2026. Let's just run through the agenda, which is all on the Council website. Item 1 is to welcome everyone, introductions, and of course remind you about safety information. Just to introduce ourselves as committee members, I'm Councillor Martin Fodor. I'm Chair of the Environment and Sustainability Policy Committee. Can we go along there?
Yep. Hi, I'm Councillor James Crawford. I'm a member for Bishopston and Ashley Down.
Abby Finch, Councillor for St George Central.
Andrew Varney, substituting for Councillor Tim Kent this evening.
Thank you.
Councillor Mark Weston, Councillor for Henry and Brentry.
Councillor Kai Dunn, Councillor for Southmead.
Councillor Tom Menard, Labour Councillor for Horfield Ward.
Kirsty Tate, Vice Chair and Councillor for Hartcliffe and Weaverwood Ward.
Thanks very much, everyone, and welcome, Councillor Varney. I think your first attendance at this committee. Thank you for substituting for Councillor Kent. We'll see. We're also aware that Councillor Izzy Russell is delayed due to a sort of bus not turning up, I think, and is on their way. So we look forward to that. So we've got one substitution. No, sorry, I meant to go back to the emergency information, although I think everyone here should know it. If in the unlikely event of an alarm sounding, it would be the real thing. We would need to leave the room calmly through the lobby, go out the main front door of City Hall, turn right, and we'd reassemble towards the cathedral, where we would get wet and it would put out any fires or anything. So thank you for substituting for Councillor Kemp. There's no other substitutions notified. This meeting is quorate. So firstly, agenda item 3, we just check, are there any people with any declarations of interest on the committee? No? None are noted. Thank you. Chair's announcements. I just have one announcement. Since we've recently had figures for the holiday services provided by Bristol Waste for waste and recycling. We do want to get the figures out to people as soon as they're finalised, but I'm delighted to say there's an incredible improvement in reliability, several thousand% increase in reliability, which is an immense relief to all the residents and councillors who would hear about it. And of course, immense thanks to both the contract management side and Bristol Waste staff and operatives and management for improving reliability to that significant extent. I think we've all appreciated that. So thanks to them. Item 5 is public forum. We have had 3 questions that were submitted and published, but we don't have anyone to look at the answers in public, and they have all been sent to the person who sent them in. Because it is an extraordinary meeting, there were other items potentially submitted, but we have to limit items in public forum in an extraordinary meeting to matters that relate to the report on the agenda. So any other public forum items that were submitted and were not relevant to that item on the agenda will be received at the next full committee meeting, which is on the 26th of February. So I hope that's clear. So we can move on to item 6, which is to receive the item on Bristol Waste Company's fleet replacement. Just to introduce it, the report seeks approval for the proposed replacement strategy for operational vehicle fleets used by the council waste service provider, which is Bristol Waste Company. Just to note, this report was originally considered by the committee on the 18th of December. The decision was taken at that meeting to escalate the decision, and that was reviewed at the escalation panel shortly afterwards. Following the meeting, I'm happy to say we agreed to resubmit this item to this extraordinary meeting for reconsideration. I think everyone appreciates we'll have more time to discuss it than was available on the night. It is a key decision. It involves spending or saving over £500,000 and impacts on 2 or more wards, as it's about the citywide service. It does contain exempt papers, and just to remember that if the committee wishes to discuss anything that is exempt, we will have to close for the public for that part of the discussion, and we'll move to a room for that exempt discussion. But we will then reconvene in this hall for the public decision to be made finally. So we have that report. I'd like to invite, I'm going to invite Peter Anderson, the Director of Property, Assets and Infrastructure, to briefly outline the report. And just to note that the full papers that are public are on pages 8 to 147 of the committee papers, including all of the advice and the workshops that were held with members in detail. So those are the papers we're looking at. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, by way of introduction, the Appendix A1 and A2 in relation to waste fleet replacement, but also the work that we did as a collective via the Waste Task and Finish Group, particularly in Appendix A, does bring to life in terms of a lot of the work we did, timeframes, lead-ins and justification. So that's on Appendix 2. So this, in relation to the replacement of the vehicle fleet through Bristol Waste, there are 10 groups of fleet, as described on page 8, in terms of the variety of fleet that is currently operated to deliver our waste and recycling services. This particular strategy is focusing on groups 1 to 4, the refuse collection, curbside, mini recycling centre collection, and recycling centre transfer vehicles. The paper refers to replacement in terms of timeframes, and the replacement approach is to replace ideally between 7 to 8 years. The current waste fleet, in terms of, is due for replacement, and for a number of reasons: reliability, costs, repairs and maintenance. And I think we've seen that through the challenges that the fleet and Bristol Waste Company have had to deliver operational performance to the standards that we would expect. And it's, as you say, Chair, it's great to see the priority and the focus and the turnaround particularly over the Christmas period, but actually for several months now. But the challenge remains in relation to maintaining an ageing fleet. One of the challenges we've had, which we've discussed at Task and Finish Group particularly, but is also drawn out in the report, is in relation to the challenge of our recycling fleet, mainly due to the construct of the vehicle with the components that our waste operatives put recycled material within, but particularly in the context of capacity, but specifically cardboard. The presentation of cardboard is significant, and that presents a big challenge for us in relation to being able to provide enough space in the vehicles. And when the vehicles are full, of course, they need to obviously to be tipped, and therefore potentially could result in a drop road or a drop road, basically, in relation to being able to tip to go back out to fill up. In relation to factors that we looked at in relation to fleet replacement, we were looking at the age profile, fleet size, the performance of the fleet. Decarbonisation is an important factor for us as well, but also depot allocation in relation to what depots we have and where in the city. So we gave consideration also to our funding approach, and the recommendation in the report is to focus on a buy-out right approach rather than hiring. The rationale for this particularly was if we were to hire, we believe it's not a viable option due to the high degree of specification of the vehicles bespoke to Bristol particularly, but for local authority themselves in relation to the specifics that we would expect our fleet to operate in. And also we were looked at in relation to the financing of options, and the recommendation is to focus on a loan through to Bristol Waste in relation to over several tranches, with the first focus being on our recycling fleet. In the context of experience of working with EV fleet, because the strategy refers to the options in relation to moving to an EV ready and an EV fleet. Bristol Waste Company currently does have experience operating an EV fleet. Currently there's a trial with an RCV vehicle, sweeper trials and cars and vans as referred to in the report. And there is current existing depot capacity for up to 6 EV recycling vehicles and 4 RCVs, particularly at Albert Road and an Avonmouth. And so it's important to consider the demand needed in relation to infrastructure needed, of course, as well as the ability to access energy, but particularly through national grid. So the paper refers to phasing. So our focus and for the recommendation is to phase one would be to focus on our curbside fleet, electric ready curbside fleet, mainly due to the challenges that we have to address in relation to, as I say, the specialist nature of and the construct of the vehicles. So we would our replacement approach would significantly help focus on our recycling targets, and obviously our requirements needed under simpler recycling coming from government. So that's the focus and the reason for focusing on curbside. Page 13 of the report does show what further to the work we've carried out in terms of how we would like the vehicle to be constructed in relation to capacity, and you'll see that and in the context of how recycling is presented, we would look to reduce the volume in the vehicle for glass, but specifically increase in relation to cardboard and to build in the ability for flexible plastics particularly. So the focus is to renewal of our recycling fleet, and mainly because of criticality of what we need to do and future-proofing the service. And that I would hand back, Chair, to you in relation to any questions or any link you back to the recommendations. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Peter. Much appreciate. So just to summarise, there are a lot of factors that have to be included. The relocation of the depot, being ready for electric vehicles if we support that switch, which I'm sure we do. The current limited capacity at the existing depots, and the fact a loan is needed, and the prioritisation of the batches of the fleet that are going to be replaced, so that there's a phase-in approach being proposed. Okay, so open up for any questions. Do any members have questions about this? Yep. Thank you. Councillor Dudd?
Yeah, thank you. And I think this is how the report should have been dealt with originally. So I'm pleased that we're here discussing it properly now, because it is a big spend, and we should give all reports proper due consideration. And I'm glad to see we're all back here today. Just a couple of questions, really, because and thanks for all the work you've done on this, Pete and Ken. I've just got a couple of concerns, really. So I think the paper is not as clear as it could be in terms of the number of vehicles we're talking about. You have to dig quite deeply to kind of understand what we're talking about. So where it says vehicles in scope, I think we're talking about 36 vehicles, is it? And then out of 36, we're guaranteeing at least 6 of those will be fully electric. Is that how I read the report correctly?
Yeah. So the recycling fleet would be, I think that the references of 47. So that would be what we would be to replace, of which 42 of those would be operational and 5 would be spare. So that would be the volume that we're looking for, of which, yes, we would move towards for 6 to be EV out of that batch. That phase would look for the vehicles to be received in 2 batches, March 27 and then September 27. So that's the time frame, and that's the quantum. And
then the general waste sort of collection fleet, is that within this scope, or is that out of this scope as it stands?
So we're phasing the replacement of the RCV fleet, the refuse collection fleet, over a 3-year period. So potentially further reports will be coming back for each of those further year replacement strategy, because Bristol Waste have invested in refurbishing all the back-end compaction units, so their life can be extended beyond the 8-year period that we'd normally see, and that work was finished this year. So it means that we've got the ability to stagger that so that we don't have all vehicles being replaced at the same time.
Okay, thanks for that.
Could I just, sorry, just on that point, if you don't mind. Okay. So in terms of the 47 vehicles, 42 generally operational, 5 in reserve, with 6 being purchased as actual EV vehicles. That is the most that can be fitted into the current supply and facilities in the depot.
Yes, within the budget that we up to 6 of the recycling fleet could be electric when we purchase them, and out of the 42 active.
Yeah, carry on, Councillor Dunn. Thanks.
Okay. So I guess this is my biggest problem with the report then. So we've got a guarantee of 6 of those are EV, and then the rest are classified as EV ready, which is quite a new sort of phrase for me. I understand what's meant by it, but it's quite new terminology. But obviously it only becomes EV if we actually spend the money to convert it to EV, and I don't see in the report where that's actually going to happen. What guarantees are there that we will convert those diesel vehicles to EV, and where's the money coming from basically to do that, and how much would that cost to do that?
So the vehicles are being procured to enable electrification, because if we were to go out and buy normal diesel vehicles, the potential to electrify them would be a lot harder, because there's 3 main parts to a vehicle. I've learned recently, and apologies the expert isn't here, but you've got the chassis, you've got the transmission and the engine and the fuel, and then you've got the back end of the vehicle. So the chassis has slight modifications, so that at a future date batteries can be bolted on without making major modifications, and then the back end, which would go around the engine, the motor, and around the batteries, is designed for space, so that it would fit around the batteries and the motor, and conduit would be put into the chassis as well to allow the battery to link to the gearbox and the controls. It's small modifications, but it means that what you don't end up with abortive works or having to whole-scale change the construction of the vehicle. Okay,
but thanks for the technical explanation there. Do we know how much that costs per vehicle to do? And do we know, is there any guarantee that there's a budget for that within the capital programme going forward? Because the lifespan of these vehicles are between 7 and 8 years, aren't they, as per the paper? So if you look at the capital budget, we sort of plan 5 years ahead, don't we? The capital budget. So you would expect some sort of allocation, wouldn't you, within the capital budget for this work to take place in 4 to 5 years' time, once the vehicles are in place?
So no, we haven't budgeted for the 4 to 5 years' time for this work to take place, because we're looking at the profile of the initial vehicles, which is over the next 4 years. As we move forward, we would look to budget. But going back to the point on the depots, at the moment, with the current depots we don't have the electric voltage coming in necessary. The committee have all been to Albert Road and seen how congested the site is. We don't have dedicated car parking to enable the electrification of the vehicles that are housed there, because they park in the staffing car park area when they're fully up, and also they park in front of other vehicles, and you wouldn't be able to have the electrification points to plug in. So there's like design layout issues with the site. So that and at Avonmouth, again, the committee have been there. We've built a new materials handling facility, and we've designed out a lot of that space. So the ability, again, grid connection and the supply coming in with the both with the bulking facilities, which are all run off of electrics for the conveyors and the compactors, and also the parking to charge is a design issue at both sites. So with the relocation of Albert Road, because it's in the Temple Quarter Phase 2 regen area, we would look to find sites that we could and design in the capabilities of electrification, and then have a financial plan to electrify.
Okay, thanks for that. And then, yeah, that kind of comes on to my kind of second issue with this, because I kind of accept what you're saying with that, Ken. And I know for many, many years, the waste company, the council, have known about the fact that we need to relocate from Albert Road, and it's beginning to, like, the fact that we're not really getting anywhere with it, or we don't know where the finish line is with that move. It's starting to affect sort of medium to long-term decisions we need to take about how the operation runs. And we're kind of taking a decision here today that's suboptimal, really, because we'd like to see a much more sustainable operation, but it's being slightly curtailed by the fact that we've not progressed with that depot relocation. So I was just wondering, is there an update on that? And obviously I've got a rough idea of maybe one of the options that you're considering. And will we have the same capacity issues with this kind of favoured option? Because it's not the biggest site. And will we have the same grid capacity issues and the lack of space issues? So surely we really need, and this plays into the amendment that I've tabled, or I'm going to table, around the need to kind of get in front of this issue and start to resolve it, because it's obviously having an impact on the decisions that this committee would like to take about how we run the operation.
Yeah. Thanks, Councillor Dad. In fact, just the other day we confirmed we would be getting a briefing for the Chair and Vice Chair about depot relocation. There's a lot of work in the background. Obviously, I'm sure you understand a lot of that is commercial. It's about real estate. It's about leases, negotiations. So it can't all be public, but work is underway. I'm sure, well, we have said we'll get a briefing, and I can make sure all the members are aware of how that's progressing. In terms of the depots, just so we may not all have had the opportunity, but anyone who's looked at the first bus depot in Hengrove, which was recently moved into a fully electric fleet at that depot. The next one will be this year at Lawrence Hill depot of First Bus. The car parking layout, gantries across the entire car park, charging facilities that drop down to where every single bus parks across the whole parking area of the depot has to be put in place. You can build that, but until there's grid capacity, you can't charge vehicles, so we can't actually equip the vehicles till there's that charging facility and that certainty. So it does converge with where we go, how we finance that, and we will be getting several more reports about these batches of vehicles. The sooner we resolve some of these issues, the sooner the switch will be made in the fleet, I'm sure. Don't know if you want to add anything to that, as director. Or
so I suppose we've engaged extensively with the Temple Quarter Regen team to look at properly mapping the locations where we would need depots based on time analysis to go to and from doorsteps, because if we're designing a service for the future, we don't want to just put it where the land's cheapest out in Avonmouth, because then the time to get down to Hartcliffe and Withywood would be astronomical, and we'd lose so much time. So we've looked at analysis of optimal locations for depots. For the central depot, because we've done some site scoring to look at different things, and obviously the next phase is looking at the grid connections for any preferred sites, and then it comes down to the layouts and the designs to see how we can configure the vehicles, because we are going to be splitting the depot to a depot in Avonmouth and a depot centrally. It does allow us to create a bit more space in the central depot for the electric charging. In Avonmouth it will be easier, and we will be looking to see how we could potentially get private wires off the back end of either of the two energy from waste facilities, because that would be a really cheap way to get electricity for the electrification.
Thanks for that. I think Councillor Weston, you had a question. Sure, go ahead.
First of all, can I just say, I actually really like the idea of the electrification coming off the back of the waste recycling facilities. I think that's actually almost a circular economy. I think that's quite positive. I don't have an issue at all with the report and what's being suggested. I didn't last time, I don't now. I think politics is the art of the possible. This is where we are now. I understand where you're coming from on it, but this is the reality of the situation. I don't think, had we been doing this 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, I think the same choices would be there now. Technology and the possibilities of electrification have advanced a lot in the last 5 years. I think we're now at the point where we can look at it. I don't think we would have been at that point 3 or 4 years ago. So it is where it is. I think we need to be a bit careful when we're talking about moving the depot, because actually what we don't want to do is speculate on sites and start spiking prices up when we're trying to buy them. That is actually quite a danger. So even when we're hinting at restrictions and constrictions and all the rest of it, we could materially affect things. We need to be a bit careful. And this actually, and I've seen the amendment that we're going to get later, and I would just say on that one, if we're going to get a report, that'll have to be in closed session, because we simply cannot afford for an inadvertent remark to play merry hell with we're trying to get the best price, and so we've got to be very conscious of that. So I think we need to factor that in. But those are my comments. I'm happy with the report as is.
Thanks very much. That's a constructive sort of comment. Were there any queries about the report? So Councillor Finch and then Councillor Reynard. Oh, and then Councillor Crawford. Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much for the report. Yeah, I appreciate the thoroughness, and especially the thoroughness around looking at all the different sort of potential alternatives to diesel vehicles. And also, I really appreciated that the sort of lifetime, I've forgotten what the wording was for it, but the whole lifespan emissions were taken into account, not just the emissions that would be emitted, but, you know, in terms of the manufacture of the vehicles as well. So, yeah, I thought that was really good and thorough, and thank you. And also all the work that went into sort of looking at the sizes of the different compartments on the recycling vehicles. Yeah, I looked through and I thought it all seemed really sensible. Yes, I had a couple of questions though. So one of them is about the sort of more tailored solutions, and I wondered if you can give any more detail on what those might look like. And in particular, I know we've talked a lot about communal bins, and I know that there's ongoing work looking at how we can improve communal bins. And I wondered, I think it's in one of the later phases that the replacement collection vehicles for the communal bin service would be procured, and I wondered if we get to the point in that communal bin investigation where we realise maybe some of them need to move away from being communal bins, is there the opportunity at that point in the procurement to maybe, instead of procuring 3 new of the communal bin ones, we could procure another curbside 1 and 2 communal bins, if that makes sense? Is there that flexibility there?
Okay, so the tailoring of our recycling fleet is quite unique to Bristol. That it's a 14-ton chassis, but because of the challenges with our streets, we actually require a vehicle that is 25 centimetres thinner than a normal 14-ton chassis. So that's one example where we require something that then affects the whole of the back end of the vehicle where all the recycling's stored. And for example, if you were North Somerset, you would want the full width because you could carry more material, and because you've got greater distances, that's more advantageous. But because of our challenges with getting down our narrow streets, we require thinner vehicles. Then you've got the composition of the back end of the vehicle, and we're requiring we've had the container refresh approved by the committee, so we're moving to a sack for a red sack, a blue sack, and then the recycling and caddy. And the sack means that the aperture that you use changes. We also still will collect along with it. We'll collect batteries potentially still, and then we've allowed for flexible plastics to be collected. So, and the way we're compiling it is on comprising those units is based on the compositional analysis of our waste, and using that to spec the capacity of each compartment. Again, that is very unique to Bristol and would be different. You know, you see that more wealthier areas get through a lot more glass because they tend to drink wine, whereas some other areas you would see higher metals and metals and cans content. So socio-demographics plays into it. So we wouldn't be able to sell our curbside vehicle to another one because the capacities and the requirements would be different. I would like to say it's a target. The right-hand side on that capacity thing is a target to try and get it to the minimum. What we're expecting is for the bids to come back with greater capacity than that. So that's where we're at. So that's that. With regard the communal recycling vehicles, we are undertaking that operational review of St Paul's, and what will come out the back end of that will inform any vehicle replacement strategy or any change in how we collect there on the whole. Because if we decide we're going to put more streets back onto a curbside collection service, then that would mean that we may need to rebalance rounds and change it, and we'll need one less communal bin vehicle, but actually one more curbside vehicle and that sort of thing. But that analysis has to go through we've got a 6-month initial review, then we'll do it, then we'll be able to roll out some changes, and then we'll look to review how that successful it is and see how far we can go, because in St Paul's those vehicles are at a later date, so it gives us time to make some big incremental changes now ahead of any vehicle procurement.
Is it okay to ask another question? Okay. Thank you. Yeah, that's really clear. So that's great that it's not locked in. Yeah, that sounds really good. The other question was just, obviously, the document is from the 18th of December committee, so it refers to starting the procurement before the end of January. So I just want to check that the decision being shifted back won't mean... Basically, are we still on track for the first tranche in April 2027?
I suppose sign off by the committee today will and then full council budget being signed off will enable us to place an order, well, Bristol Waste to place an order at the end of February, because the recycling fleet has come forward as a batch because it's service critical. The fleet are reaching the end of their life. There are reliability issues. The capacity on the vehicles needs changing. And we need to get on and do that. Otherwise, we're not going to see incremental improvements in the collection service that we all want.
So we can keep on target for that. It is really critical, knowing the need to sort of reinstate all the sort of repair and maintenance has kept the vehicles on the road, but they are rapidly coming to the very end of their life. Okay, so we had a question from Councillor Renard, then Councillor Crawford. Thank you. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks guys for this report. My question was actually related to reliability as well. So that phased delivery, are we anticipating that will then support that increased reliability that we've seen over the Christmas period? Is that kind of going onward? And looking ahead past this kind of 5-year strategy, I assume that we'll be looking, if we look, 5, 10, 15, 20 years in the future, are we still kind of anticipating that we'll be doing that phased delivery? I just want to kind of understand a bit more how having this phased rollout of new fleet is going to impact on reliability as our trucks reach the end of their lives, basically.
So the last time we renewed the fleet was 2018 into 19, and it was a big bang. We did all the refuse collection vehicles and all the recycling vehicles all at the same time. Oh, I've got my glasses on. All at the same time, and that creates a huge financial funding pressure, but also a maintenance pressure towards the end of the life of the vehicles. So what we've done using the experience of Street Care Services, which was the expert that you've all met, Dave McGill, is looked at how we could reduce the pressure. And so by staggering the refuse over the next 3 years, following 3 years, that reduces the pressure for the fleet renewal. It allows us to contract hire, it allows us to lease, it allows us to buy outright. So it's got flexibility on the refuse side, which is great because we've invested in the Bristol Waste invested in the refurbishment that was needed. With the recycling fleet, because of the nature of the fleet, we generally have most of the vehicles out of the 40, you know, are the large vehicles, and then we have some narrow access. And what you need generally is all the vehicles to be interchangeable, apart from the narrow access vehicles. And so it's been a big bang approach with them this time because of the service, like reliability need. As we get close to, hopefully, we will have electrified the fleet, and so when we get to the 5-year mark, we'll have electrified the fleet, and it will be another further, say, 8 years life. We can have a transition of vehicles so that we then break that 40 into tranches rather than going all 40 at the same time.
Okay, great, thanks. Can I ask another couple of questions? Yeah, that's really helpful to know. I also just had another question. So it was mentioned the first bus depot and the electrification of the first bus. That's obviously been a real success story. Very, very popular new fleet that they've got. But that was funded at least partly, or I think mostly, I can't quite be sure, due to a central government grant. I was just wondering if there is a similar grant for our own kind of electrification fleet. Is there one available?
Not that I'm aware of currently. There was an available fund that we could have bidded in for in relation to link to our depots, but it was quite late on. We weren't able to get the bid ready, and I don't think we would have met some of the criteria, so we weren't able to do that. But in relation to future bids, I'd like to, or opportunities, obviously we'll keep looking. But currently there isn't any money that is available via grants from government at this time.
Okay, yeah. I was wondering then if that's possible to actually kind of put that forward, because as Councillor Dudd has noted, we're getting EV-ready vehicles, and we would eventually be putting in that capital spend for that electrification. So, and I'm assuming that other waste authorities in the country are also looking at electrifying their fleet to kind of go for their net zero. So I think it would be really beneficial if we could potentially make that case to central government at some point, whether that's a letter, whether that's maybe some commentary for the LGA or the Core Cities Network, if that would be possible.
Definitely.
Well, yeah, certainly. I don't think there's any let up in trying to secure funding as this committee itself approved a significant bid to help 5 of our other council depots, our own council depots, to electrify just a few months ago. We'll always be on the lookout to find opportunities for funding, because that makes it all much more possible, in conjunction with knowing that the grid capacity is there to actually charge the vehicles when we get them as well. Were there other questions? I don't see any. Councillor Reynolds, you do have a question then. Okay, go ahead.
More than one. But I think on that point, perhaps the income from the clean air zone might be a potential source of revenue when we're thinking about what's going to clean up our air. I just wanted to kind of just make sure I got like an understanding of some of these elements. I just wanted to start with the 6 electric vehicles. Why you felt you could only go that far, and the other 41 are going to be diesel with the possibility to convert to electric.
It was purely based on the supply into the sites.
So, okay, so that's,
yeah.
Okay. All right. No, that's helpful. So we're going to be buying 6 electric vehicles, 41 diesel, with the possibility to convert them later. But we've currently got no budget in the capital programme to convert them later. Just to check that. My understanding on that for now.
Yeah, that's correct. Clearly, we can bring capital forward, or we can get obviously annual review of capital. But at the moment, we built in subject to the budget going through for this first phase. But because of the tranches and the future phases, yes, there's an expectation that we would. amount and sequence to be confirmed. But there's an expectation that, yes, there is a requirement and we would be seeking capital money for this, or, as you say, grant opportunities.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, every year we review what the capital priorities are. As we know capacity is available to charge something, as we know facilities for charging their grid connections, we can phase in the conversion of the vehicles, which will be ready for that. So I don't feel that's a problem with such a phased programme as we have here in front of us today, because it will be amended year by year, phase by phase.
Yeah, that's how it's just trying to understand it, because I think what I'm hearing from you is this is basically your only option, because at the moment the depots that you're working with haven't got the capacity and you've got no other alternative. So I suppose my next question linked to that, and this might link to a paper that will come down the line, is around depot relocation and how realistic we think it is that we're going to be relocating anywhere else in the next 5 years, because obviously that's a significant risk to potential conversion of the diesel vehicles later, is if you can't get off the site. St Philip's Marsh, this is a site in phase 2. St Philip's Marsh is a 20-year build-out programme, isn't it? 15 to 20 year. And with phase 1, the other side being focused on first. So I'm just interested in understanding really how likely it is that we're going to be moving somewhere where we're actually going to be able to convert these vehicles to use them as electric at any point in the next 5 years, never mind 10.
Ever the optimist, but no, working working collaboratively, as Ken mentioned, with the Temple Quarter team, in terms of the expectation is to move within 5 years. That is the expectation. In terms of the work we've done, that we know where we would like to focus, but those plans are still working through. So I can't give you the confidence maybe you're seeking right now in terms of what that is in the context of when and how. But in terms of the engagement we've had and sites that we have either preferred, looked at, considered, that we are quite far in relation to knowing where we would want these to be, and also sites that potentially we would like to take forward. There is a wider conversation linked to depot strategy for the council beyond obviously waste depots. We do own a number of depots across the city as well, and also we, as a landowner, there are opportunities for us to explore, which are all part of those options. So there has been work. There is ongoing work. There's good engagement with the Temple Quarter team and partners. Network Rail, for example, linked to engagement through Days Road as the recycling centre, which is a current lease. There's a number of factors with either land we own, leases we operate, and also opportunities of where in the city we would prefer to be. And so I can give you comfort that that work is ongoing. And I would like to be confident that would be moving out of Albert because of the requirements to move out because of the zoning of St Philip's Marsh.
That's helpful. And so just one last quick question. If you're thinking about it from a risk perspective of how likely it is that we'll still be on the Albert Road depot site in 5 years' time, would you regard it as low risk, medium risk, high risk?
Low to medium. There is risk, of course there is, and that's for us to mitigate through. But I am confident that to minimise the risk, the work we've done and the options appraisals and the work and the engagement with landowners and other leaseholders of the sites, there's good progress. So maybe we can have those ongoing conversation to give you that confidence.
I think the Executive Director would like to add something. I mean, I'm confident from all the discussions and the fact we've got another briefing scheduled for the Vice Chair and myself. We know there's a lot of work going on in the background. Some of it, as Councillor Weston sort of correctly sort of surmised, can't be aired in public because we don't want to give away the value of the site at our own expense. But would you like to add something to that? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I was just going to support what Peter said. Councillor, as you know, I'm the member on the LLP board, the Temple Quarter LLP board, just to bring that aspect to it. It's a complicated project. It's a long-term project, as you said, but there's been good progress in the last year. There's a lot of commitment to put all the different pieces in place to make this happen. There's still a lot to do, but I think low to medium risk feels about right.
Thanks for that. Yes. And obviously the the pace of development, the pace of changes in the ground in Temple Quarter will affect the opportunities and the timescale that we've still got before development ever reaches that corner of the site. Councillor Varney, you had a question, didn't you?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, while I was reading the report, I was writing down quite a few questions, and then when I continued reading, those questions were mostly answered, so I don't have many questions, but I was just wanting to know about the EV-ready vehicles, and do we know the cost, what like cost is going to be to convert from diesel to electric? Obviously, we're talking about 5 years from now, so costs might go up or down, who knows?
Yes, so what I haven't said so far is that to inform this procurement, this fleet replacement strategy, myself and Bristol Waste have engaged extensively with the main 2 recycling fleet operators, and also two of the most advanced operators when it comes to retrofitting large vehicles like refuse collection vehicles and the recycling vehicles to electric. And so what we know is if we were to buy the recycling fleet all electric, it would be 26 million. And what you're doing by getting the vehicle and then EV ready is you're spending the 30 million up front, and then when you go to electrify your vehicle, you're paying the equivalent doubling of the cost at the later point when you can actually have it. So electric vehicle, a diesel vehicle costs, or an EV ready vehicle, because we're specifying it as part of our vehicle specification, or the Bristol Waste specification, is 180k, but to buy a electric recycling vehicle would be 360. So you're pushing that 180, the doubling of the cost, to the point that you electrify it, because it's on the motor and it's on the batteries, which are the expensive bits. And that's why we're specifying EV ready, because we are enabling those to be put into the vehicle without abortive works or extra expense by changing and modifying bays and compartments.
And when an EV-ready vehicle is converted, what happens to the diesel engine? Does that stay in the vehicle, or is it sold for scrap?
So the engine and the gearbox come out, and the motor goes in, because it becomes a motor rather than an engine, and the automatic transmission goes in. And then the engine would be sold for scrap or parts, or we saw a warehouse of them stacked up where they're looking to sell them to the market. New ones where they buy in a diesel chassis with engine, and then they take the engine out, and then they put the electric motor in, and so there's just racks of engines waiting to be sold. So at that point, but the positive is that at that point you lose a lot of your reliability, because the engine and the gearbox are 2 of the things that start to play up. So you can refurb the chassis at the same time, so that then your 8-year vehicle lives 5 years, and then it's got another 8 years because of the battery life. And then as the batteries degrade, I think we mentioned to the committee we would look to battery harvest, which is where we take the old batteries, we put them into a container, and then we draw off the grid at cheap rate, and then we can use that electricity to sell back to the grid or to power our daytime use.
Just one final question about the nature of recycling and how it's changed in recent years. Obviously, there's a lot more cardboard as people are ordering more and more stuff online, and so we need to change the capacity of our vehicles to deal with that. Stillages, I believe, is that the word? That's a new word I learnt today. But who's to say that the nature of recycling won't change again in the future, and how flexible can we be with our new vehicles?
So you're right. The changes in the composition, we can't that can be exposed to change, and what we're doing is looking at the whole, diverting all of the waste from the bins to see how our daily pass rates per vehicle would be impacted. And so we're trying to base it on a maximum of each material type at the moment that's in the bin and that's presented. Now, food waste has, like a lot of the composition analysis that we've had is from the last 8 years. And obviously cardboard really changed more recently. And when the vehicles were purchased, we brought in the cardboard sack that doubled the capacity, but there were late changes in the procurement, and I don't think the procurement at that time was driven by what is the material. It was just driven by get a recycling vehicle. So we've learned our lesson, because we've been having reliability issues, to design a vehicle as much that has as much capacity to take as much material as possible. So we've designed it as well as we can based on the material in our bins, rather than just getting a recycling vehicle with these compartments.
Thanks very much for that. And can I just sort of put on record, thank you to yourself and officers and the professional advisors who we heard from. There's a wealth of information that clearly you looked into this in a great deal of depth, and a lot of this is in the report for those who want to dig deeper into the issues, and was covered in the workshops we held and so on. Were there any other questions? If not, we can move on to the recommendations that are in the report. Yeah, I don't see any more questions. So we have two recommendations that are in the report we have tabled. And it has been suggested there might be an amendment. So the current recommendations are, firstly, that the Committee for Environment and Sustainability approves the proposed replacement strategy for the operational vehicle fleet that are utilised by the Council's waste services provider, Bristol Waste Company. And secondly, that the Committee for Environment and Sustainability notes that the financing of the initial batch of vehicles will be sought via the Strategy and Resources Committee and will be subject to full Council budget approval. So those are the two recommendations.
So, Chair, do I move my suggested amendment now?
We just move for second first.
Okay.
Yeah. Firstly, I'm proposing those two resolutions. Are they seconded by the committee? Yep.
I'll second those.
Thank you very much, Councillor Crawford. So if there is an amendment, would you like to propose that, Councillor Dodd?
Yeah, thank you. And I'm also willing to, given what Mark said about a confidential paper, I'm willing to amend that somewhere within the wording. I don't know where, if Mark feels that's necessary.
I think it would be a good idea. I think it would be a good idea. I think we can take the amendment. Sorry, people do whatever they like, of course. I think the amendment, I don't have a problem with the amendment at all, but if we put the word confidential in there, that way we're not raising public expectation too much from the beginning. But I think that would be useful.
Okay.
So
yeah, confidential.
So I've sent the wording around to the committee, but I'll read it out. That the Committee for Environment and Sustainability instructs officers to bring confidential options paper regarding the potential relocation of the Albert Road depot to a future meeting of the Environment and Sustainability Committee no later than the 2nd of August 2026.
Okay, we're just waiting to see that can be displayed on screen, because we have to be clear of the wording. Did you have a comment, Councillor Finch?
Yeah, well, I just had a question, I guess, for officers based on that. So I guess partly I'm interested to know that deadline of August this year, is that realistic in terms of where things are at the moment? And also, I had understood that decision about the relocation would sit with Strategy and Resources, not with Environment and Sustainability. So just to make sure that we're not accidentally doubling up. Yeah. And I guess the other one was about confidentiality, but if the confidential word is in there, maybe that's less of a concern.
Sorry, we've got the word in, I think it's correct, if we can confirm that, on the screen. We do have to know firstly that's seconded, and we will take any questions on that at this stage.
I second that.
So Councillor Tate has seconded, but...
Yeah, no, wording on the screen isn't quite...
Councillor West.
The wording on the screen isn't quite what we're suggesting. So...
Confidential.
Yeah, instructs officers to bring a confidential options paper. So it's just the end of the first line to bring a confidential options paper.
Just need to go for a break just for a second to check that.
No, I think
drop an N.
Yeah, it's a very minor change.
Are we happy that's unambiguous? It will have the word
a confidential
replacing the word and options. Okay, thank you. I'm just confirming we mustn't have any uncertainty. Could we comment on the deadline that's raised by Councillor Finch?
So I'm happy to second that now.
Thank you, Councillor Tate. So that's seconded.
Yeah, I was just going to comment from an officer point of view, if that's okay, Chair. So a couple of things. The amendment talks about an options paper regarding the potential relocation. We're very happy to bring that back. I'm not quite sure where we'll be at that point, but we'll bring a briefing for you on the options of where we are. I'm very happy to do that. So on that basis, I'm happy with the time frame. I mean, Councillor Dudge flagged that there's a number, the importance of the issues around the depot for the future strategy. I think it's fair to say that as a team we've been grappling with a number of key issues and key decisions, a number of which came to the last meeting, to inform the future business plan that we'll be working on with Bristol Waste Company through this following year. So we've got a whole programme of work looking at things like, the future contract arrangements with them, the fleet strategy, the depot strategy. So I'm very happy to bring an update to the committee on the 2nd of August or subsequently. I mean, we've been working to bringing the business plan back to the committee in September, colleagues, haven't we, I think? Yeah.
So just to be clear, the contract is already coming back to committee by September. Work is undergoing on the decision we made in December. The Bristol Waste own, as a council-owned company, their business plan is in fact received by the Strategy and Resources Committee, isn't it? But we will be briefed on that because obviously we have a great interest in the work they deliver for us for our contracts.
Yes, I think that's okay. I'm very happy to bring the briefing here. I mean, on the confidentiality point, Councillor Weston makes a good point. It's largely about managing expectations. There's a process that we go through with Democratic Services colleagues with any paper to decide whether it's confidential, public or partially exempt at the time, which we do with this paper. But I think Councillor Weston wanted to suggest a change to sort of manage expectations. This is very likely to be, so that's fine, I think, from my point of view.
Okay. Councillor Crawford and then Councillor Finch had questions on this. Thank you.
Just a comment. I think the amendment's fine, but I just had a question as well. Obviously, this recommendation notes that the fleet spend is approved at Strategy and Resources and is subject to full council budget approval. I'm assuming that would be similar for the options for the relocation, in that whilst we might be able to discuss the options and approve an option that we would put forward, that the financial kind of spend would be decided by Strategy and Resources and full council. Is that correct?
Yes, I think so. I mean, it's a briefing on the potential relocation that I think that's where you're not asking, isn't it? Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, I think the decision about the investment would probably be made by Strategy and Resources. Yeah. Okay.
Thanks, John.
Thanks for that clarification.
I'm just as well as I'm minded to support this amendment. I think this is fine. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Finch.
Thank you. Yeah, it was just a sort of follow up from my original question. So, yeah, totally agree. It would be great to get a briefing with where things are at before the 2nd of August. But I read an options paper as being something different from a briefing, and I read an options paper as being this committee making a decision as to the way forwards. So I just want to make absolutely sure we're all on the same page, and that Councillor Dudd is happy that a briefing is encompassed by what this means, because to me I read this as meaning something quite different from a briefing, if that makes sense.
Could I clarify? An options paper doesn't mean there's a final decision at that point. And if it is in closed session, we might hear a lot of issues about possible sites, pros and cons, costs, capacity, and so on. But that doesn't mean we are signing a decision at that point, I suspect. Just so we're clear. So, but we can certainly find out, and we'll get an item back to committee about that.
Okay. And just to check with, I guess I'd be keen to hear what Councillor Dudd thinks.
Did you want me to speak to the amendment? Did you want me to?
If you're happy with what we've clarified so far, please go ahead.
Yeah. So the way I see it, obviously, this committee is responsible for the operation of the waste service in the city. And a big part of that is where depots are, how that supports the service that we want. So I think with an options paper that comes to us, it's about our view on how those options best support the waste service within the city and the operation and running of the waste service, and that we're happy with it from that point of view. The financial side of it and the land purchase and signing off, that clearly is with strategy and resources, but I think it's important that we say that actually from an operational point of view, we think that's a good depot for the operation of the waste service that we're responsible for. And as I said, where depots are fundamental to the sustainable running of a waste service.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Dodd. No, I concur. We are concerned with the performance, with the service reliability, and indeed, I'm sure in at least one of the workshops we had in the Task and Finish group, we looked at the effective locations for the most reliable service. I think that was documented in the appendix at the last meeting, certainly. So I think we're all in agreement. We know what we're seeking and we understand what we can and can't do publicly as well. Are we able to move forward with that? So, yeah. So we have...
That's the one there.
So
yeah.
Chair,
so we've read out... sorry, go ahead.
Just for clarity, so we'll be voting on including the amendment, and then we'll be voting on the full recommendations. Is that correct? Yeah.
That's correct. That's just what we're being clear about. So, firstly, having proposed and seconded the amendment as displayed and as agreed on the screen, we're asking if the committee is happy to amend the officer recommendations which are tabled. The first two I read out. The third is now on the screen and we've read out, or I'm happy to read out again.
Could you just read all three?
So I'll read them all. Just so we're clear, because we're making a committee decision. So the recommendations now understood to be, firstly, that the Committee for Environment and Sustainability approves the proposed replacement strategy for operational vehicle fleet that are utilised by the Council's waste service provider, Bristol Waste Company, BWC. Secondly, that the Committee for Environment and Sustainability notes that the financing of the initial batch of vehicles will be sought via the Strategy and Resources Committee and will be subject to full Council budget approval. And now thirdly, that the Committee for Environment and Sustainability instructs officers to bring a confidential options paper regarding the potential relocation of the Albert Road depot to a future meeting of the Environment and Sustainability Committee no later than 2nd of August 2026. So we're proposing all three. Are they all confirmed? They're all seconded?
That was, yeah, you got the amendment. That was the amendment. We now just need a seconder for the amendment.
We're just confirming it's seconded.
Yeah,
Councillor Tate has seconded that. Can I just check then, committee? Are we happy to approve that we're about to receive those? So can we approve that as the three recommendations coming forward? Being amended. So these are coming forward to us.
They're going to now move to be the substantive motions, and then we will vote on them as they
if we make all three the substantive motions, are we all agreed?
So
yeah.
Can we have four? So
Yeah, I think we're unanimous there. So those are now all our three substantive recommendations. And are we happy to take them all together in a vote that we approve or otherwise? Thank you. I think I've seen nodding. So we're now going to vote on all three. Are the committee happy to approve those three as tabled? Oh, sorry. Do we need that seconded?
Yeah, I want another one.
You need that seconded?
Yeah.
Right. Are we seconding that? Councillor Weston has seconded. Oh, okay. Councillor Crawford. They're so keen, they've both seconded. Thank you. So can
we now do the for and against?
So we now need to vote. Are we agreed on these? Those in favour, please raise your hands. We've got 6 hands raised. Those against, do we have any voting against? No. Are there any abstentions? I see the 3 Labour members have abstained. So we have passed that. These are now all approved by committee, including the Labour amendment not supported by Labour just now. We now conclude the meeting, and the next meeting following this extraordinary meeting of Environment and Sustainability Policy Committee will be on Thursday, the 26th February at 5 p.m. So we're closing the meeting at just after 6:35. Thank you very much, everyone. We shall see you all at the next meeting, other than perhaps Councillor Varney. Thanks. Good night.